The Nouveau Charléty Stadium, built in the 13th arrondissement of Paris by the architects Henri and Bruno Gaudin. A vast project financed by the city of Paris and inaugurated in 1994. The site lies between Paris and the city's southern suburbs, close to the Gentilly cemetery and a 1930s housing project. Cemeteries, housing projects, and stadiums are the amenities that Paris has always relegated to its boundaries. Charléty occupies an 8-hectare parcel of land between the inner and outer ring roads. The new stadium replaced the old 2,000-seat Charléty Stadium built in 1938 for the Paris University Club. This was a local stadium used for athletics and other sporting events, and which drew its biggest crowd in May 1968, when some 50,000 people gathered to listen to socialist politician Pierre Mendès France. In 1988, the city of Paris decided to demolish the dilapidated structure and replace it with the type of modern stadium the capital needed to host major athletic events. The old stadium occupied a small part of the site. The new project envisaged much more intensive use of the land, with additional amenities, office blocks, and residential buildings. The city authorities invited architects to tender. The winning design by Henri and Bruno Gaudin was chosen for its optimum use of the available space in harmony with the openness of the area, known as the Green Belt because of its tree-lined boulevards.
I
don't rely on my imagination. I find my architectural inspiration in the buildings of Rome, the Brittany landscape, the jetties of Le Havre, or the arches of a church. My source of new ideas is the real world, with its blend of solidity and lightness that gives architecture its ambivalent nature. The arrangement of fullness and emptiness, of buildings and the space between them, is what characterizes all architecture.
Henri Gaudin used to be a sailor. Today he is one of the architects injecting new life into French architecture. He has just finished the Paris Archives and the University of Amiens. His son Bruno collaborated on the Charléty project, a rare occurrence in the world of architecture. The center of a stadium is a void, an immense void with standard dimensions imposed on the architects. A rectangular pitch measuring 120 meters by 70, intended for team sports inside an oval of a 400-meter racetrack. The width of the lanes, the surface of the track, and the number and layout of runways for pole vaulting and long jumping are all standard. Around this void are the spectators' terraces. Without an audience, a stadium is just a sports field. Since ancient Greece and Rome, stadiums have been designed around the interplay between the emptiness of the playing area and the fullness of the terraces. A stadium is primarily a place of entertainment, intended to hold as many spectators as possible. This type of architectural space poses a significant problem of scale: how to provide optimum visual facility for thousands of spectators. Charléty is primarily used for track and field events, but it also hosts rugby matches. The distance between the field and the stands can be up to 20 meters, which is the combined width of the track and jumping runways. The architects designed very steep terraces with a gradient of 20% to compensate for the distance from the pitch and to offer spectators a good overall view. The new Charléty Stadium is capable of seating 20,000. Two stands, one above the other, run along the edge of the track and are separated by stairs leading to the terraces. The Gaudins added a third stand beside the finishing line on the west side to accommodate more spectators along the 100-meter straight, the most popular of athletic events. The new stand serves to shelter the track from strong winds, but it was mainly designed with the spectators in mind.
J'ai dessiné des squelettes des vertébrés. Je me suis plus
I drew skeletons of vertebrates.
Dans ces dessins,
I had fun with these creatures. The drawings reveal how nothing is redundant or superfluous. Everything has its rightful place, and everything is set in relation to the rest. You can really sense the relationship between things here. The whole cannot be separated from its parts, nor the structure from the details. The whole contains the parts, and each detail contains the whole. The structure doesn't just hold together, it shows you how it holds together.
The stadium's framework, the basic element of its structure, is composed of very distinctive concrete pillars. They are placed at intervals around the perimeter and look like a gigantic skeleton from the outside. But this is more than just an image. These pillars fulfill a dual function. They bear the weight of both the stands and the roof. The first stand rests directly on the ground. The second, a clearly separate unit, is supported by concrete girders leaning against the pillars. On top, metal arms serve to reinforce the pillars, which act as buttresses counterbalancing the weight of the roof. Without them, the large suspended aluminum sheet would be pulled forward. A seemingly simple technical solution which required extremely complex calculations on the part of the architects and engineers. The whole structure is a remarkable balancing act. The roof weighs several tons, and yet it appears to be very light.
The form reflects the effort. It expresses the interaction of forces inside the frame and the pillars. All these tensions and stresses are due to the fact that Charléty is a covered stadium. The difficulty is not building the stands, but the roof, because it must withstand considerable forces such as snow and wind. The design is determined by a precise understanding of these stresses, which exercises the architect's imagination. We had to work on the appearance of the structure as if it were dissecting a building, to see how it had been built, the idea being to turn this technical requirement into the very architecture of the stadium.
So that the third stand would overhang the racetrack, the architects adjusted the height of the pillars. They added jambs so that the stresses that they are subjected to would spread more evenly. Along the 100-meter straight, the first and second stands are structured around the jambs. The roof is suspended on a system of masts and cables, evoking the rigging on a ship. Large metal girders, supported by arms on either side of the pillars, bear the weight of the grandstand. The stadium takes the form of a loop, but it is not continuous. At the point where the stands meet, there is a gap that the architects emphasized, with large sails stretched out between lighting poles. This link is purely artistic, a stylistic effect designed to highlight the difference in height. Charléty does not just host major sporting events. The city's authorities' plans included other amenities, namely a large number of offices and a modern complex for the PUC, Paris University Club, for which the old stadium was built. The old stadium was poorly oriented. The new orientation, chosen to shelter the racetrack from the wind, effectively divides the site in two. On the one side, the peripheral installations, and on the other, a residual space laid out as a garden. The architects placed the headquarters of the French Olympic Committee and an office complex along the avenue connecting the inner and outer ring roads. The area between these buildings and the stadium itself is for the PUC. By concentrating all the buildings on one side, the architects were able to free up a large area for sports and recreation. This garden almost jeopardized the existence of the new stadium. Initially, this corner was reserved for a residential complex that would tie in with the nearby housing estates and contribute to the financing of the project. However, this contravened the city authorities' own land use regulations and minimum vegetation requirements for the area. The residential complex had to be replaced by a garden, but the project came to a standstill for 18 months because of inadequate finances. The chairman of the Olympic Committee decided to go ahead with the construction of his new headquarters, financed by the profits from the Winter Olympics in Albertville. His actions swept all hesitation aside and got the project going. Shaped like the bow of a boat, this marble and glass building faces the city like the showcase of French sports. Jagged geometric shapes conceal half-buried structures, such as the exhibition hall and an auditorium whose functions are hinted at by the exterior. A 200-meter-long office block adjoins the Olympic Committee building. The whole has the appearance of a large docked ship. The architects varied the materials and forms to break away from the conventional appearance of a row of offices. They used different styles for the front facing Paris and the back facing the suburbs. Its tapered form stops dead at the ring road along a heavily congested traffic lane. The architects broke up the effect of a solid wall by creating arcades beneath the office block. The arcades act as belvederes over the training fields. These gaps form a visual continuity with the avenue and connect Charléty to the city. The Paris University Club takes up the rest of the site with its tennis courts, training field, and small office buildings which curve around the track. With its central position between the office block and the stadium, the club, whose 60-year history is inseparable from that of Charléty, has a symbolic function uniting the two monumental elements of the project. The PUC complex extends along the outer ring road and looks out to the suburbs. On the Paris side, the architects installed an esplanade in front of the spectators' entrance. Located on the same level as the inner ring road, this space, hemmed in by the Olympic Committee building and the stadium, extends the presence of the city and provides access to the different stands.
The main problems Charléty posed were how to build a stadium that was part of the city and how to fit so many different elements onto only 8 hectares of land. We're lucky to have the facilities around the stadium because they form a real piece of the city. The collection of buildings works far better than if we had built a stadium by itself. By creating contrasts and connections, we wanted to show that the city is something other than just a collection of isolated objects standing side by side. This approach also generates economies of scale and complementarity. The idea is that a city can still be made with a mixture of images and forms, making it at once complex and coherent. By concentrating the buildings instead of scattering them, the architects wove a network of passages and staircase between the various components to create the feeling of a city. Club members and athletes enter this sports city through a large archway built in the side of the office block alongside a lane running beside the PUC building. At the center of this network, a large whaleback roof in stainless steel juts out at the level of the PUC's lane. An enormous space plunging into the basement and housing a multi-purpose hall that seats 1,400. Its height indicates the presence of subterranean facilities near the stadium.
Although the hall is located in the basement, it is on the same level as the main stadium. On the city side, the stadium is embedded 5 meters below the outer ring road, which can be seen through the gap between the first and second stands. Over by the PUC complex, the stadium is also 5 meters below the level of the training ground, while the avenue running alongside the offices lies 5 meters above the training ground. These differences in height reflect a basic characteristic of Charléty. There is a 10-meter slope between each end of the site. A significant difference, which the architects took advantage of to divide the site up into a series of platforms and to give a hierarchy to the different functions of the project. They even transposed this difference into the shape of the stadium itself. The ellipse has a bizarre feature. The roof rises and undulates. This fluctuation is in fact an airborne echo of the curve formed by the terraces on the inside. The slope becomes an aspect of the stadium and an architectural theme in its own right.
The scrolling lines satisfy the theatrical nature of the place. An ellipse is a shape that brings things together. Convivial forms embracing arcs that were most eloquently expressed in the ancient Greek and Roman theaters. These immense structures are metaphors for walking, movement, running. In a race, one leg rests on the ground while the other is thrust forward, an imbalance imitated by these huge structures.
Despite its imposing form, Charléty is an open space, a space for performances, which brings people together without enclosing them. The city sees the stadium, and the stadium sees the city. Although this space now houses a large number of sports facilities and offices, it is not just another shapeless mass located on the outskirts of Paris. Charléty Stadium has recreated a flow and a link in the heterogeneous urban landscape between the local streetscape, the city, and its suburbs.